Dr. Mathew is back by popular demand to delve into a more specific subject of how Ayurveda can help us females with our hormonal health. And that's throughout the different phases in our life. So covering anything from PMT to perimenopause and into menopause. And of course, this affects us all in some different form. And I can personally say I've had my fair share of issues around hormones. So I'm delighted personally to have Dr. Mathew here. And the way we're going to run this session is I'll kick off by asking Dr. Mathew some questions. We'll have a kind of conversation about all of this because it's a huge subject matter. But please feel free to put your questions into the chat box and we're going to answer them as we go along. And hopefully we'll be able to address a lot of those. So, Dr. Mathew, good morning.
Good morning, Stella. Thank you very much for
really lovely to
inviting me to this.
Yeah, nice to see you and have you here. It's great that you're joining us and again sharing your Ayurvedic wisdom. So I think we'll just kick it off immediately. And I wanted to ask about whether our constitution makes us more prone to certain hormonal imbalances or symptoms, please.
Right. So to answer this question, I'm just going to quickly sort of think about constitution, whether everybody knows about their constitution. I'm not going to explain the whole basic concept like Stella said. You can have a quick read or go through the questionnaire to understand what it is. But the hormonal system as well as the constitution, both are actually in a way like superpowers. It's good for you. Whichever way it is actually really beneficial. Whichever tendency or constitution you have a unique superpower. And the other hormonal system, even though there are symptoms because of different changes happening, it is still an incredible ability to nurture life. So being in a certain constitution does not cause any hormonal imbalance. It does not cause any variation in the hormone, which it shouldn't happen. The constitution, but it can influence the intensity of symptoms. Like, for example, if the constitution is more fiery, the person is more like Pitta, we call it Pitta, the fiery or acidic nature. The symptoms might be also tilting towards, say, if we are talking about premenstrual syndrome or premenstrual tension, it's mostly will be related to like a acne prone skin or heat and redness and tendency for burning sensation, inflammation. All those pitta related symptoms will be a bit more visible. It's not directly proportional to any particular hormone because the level of hormone matters slightly less than the amount of sensitivity the person's constitution creates. So if it's vata related personality type, again the hormones may not change that much, but the symptoms might tilt more to cramps and pains and things which are associated with the vata or the nervous nature. It can create anxiety, it can create worrying or restless tendencies. That is the influence of the constitution. It's not going to change the level of hormones, and it might not change if there is hormone supplementing involved. It just makes certain symptoms a bit more visible. There's no disadvantage in any.
That's really interesting. So just give us, again, you touched on that a little bit, but just give us the main symptoms that you usually see around the different doshas.
Yes, so if we are talking about the premenstrual sort of symptoms, with regard to different doshas, the symptoms can vary, but predominantly premenstrual time, the time before the menstrual cycle bleeding happens, is actually a pitta and a vata associated state of the cycle. So I will slightly explain the whole process also without going too much into Sanskrit words. to try my best to actually explain what is a menstrual cycle from an Ayurvedic point of view. Basically, it has the same characteristic of the three doshas. Like the initial phase of the menstrual cycle, starting from the menstrual bleeding towards the ovulation, where the focus is on nourishing. Two places there is nourishment happening. One is the nourishment happening in the ovaries, where the focus is on maturing a follicle, egg, etc. And there is another phase of nourishment slowly happening in rebuilding the uterine wall and the inner wall of the uterus to prepare towards the ovulation phase. And nourishment is always kapha. Kapha dosha, water and earth are the necessary elements for nourishment. So those actually promote these aspect, this phase of the menstrual cycle. Then it comes to ovulation, and post ovulation either fertilization happens or the egg is actually disintegrates and it's lost. And then the process is more focused on pitta, where uh, there is more circulation developing inside the uterus. There is huge hormonal variation. In fact, the biggest hormonal variation in menstrual cycle does not happen before the cycle or the bleeding start. It happens at ovulation. That's where the biggest fall happens. It's not that visible because the change in the hormones are creating some sort of a change which the body is actually very focused on, which is more related to preparing this uterine wall for the egg and the if it is fertilized, it to settle down. So all that pitta energy is focusing there, and then further to that, if the ovulation does the post ovulation fertilization is not happening, then the egg and the uh, follicle which it's secreted from, it's all degenerating, and then degeneration starts kicking in. That's the vata phase. Vata is always related to dryness, degeneration, and it's more sort of helps with the movement of all uh, the tissues that were lining the uterus. Removing it, there needs to be some form of contraction and spasm there to help that process, and that is all removed. And now, why is it happening from an Ayurvedic point of view? Uh, Creating that space for life to nurture in its most purest form is a very, very important task in the whole process, and that requires a brand new system around it, which has zero amount of flaws, and that can actually nurture this whole process in the most sort of balanced way. So it's in fact a way of cleansing. Now, if you come back to the question, like what kind of symptoms you experience in the nourishing phase, like I said, it's a kapha phase. So symptoms might also be related to kapha. Kapha usually in its good way, it's nourishing. So it is a place where after post menstruation till the ovulation phase is where the body has the maximum energy, maximum ability to do activities, strength. But at the same time, there can be some form of water retention, lethargy. If somebody has issues related to kapha, it can create more than one follicle being developed there, and it can create follicle if there is too many maturing and getting developed, that causes cyst formation. So there is that kind of issues which can be formed post ovulation in the pitta phase. That's where the premenstrual symptoms slowly start. You might notice some form of pitta variations like mood swings or any form of irritability, and that sort of symptoms related to body temperature changing. So the basal body temperature, if somebody is monitoring it, definitely changes with the pitta. It goes like a half a degree high. It's so visible. And then after that, it's vata gradually taking over. So there will be more sort of worrying, anxiety, cramps, all the symptoms that we associate with nervous system, we associate with air and space, dryness. All of these actually starts developing, and aches and pains, backache, joint aches, these all can actually also happen during this phase. And menstruation, the actual time where the cycles, the bleeding happens, is more like a reset and cleanse. And that's where the body again restarts and gains the ability to restart this whole process.
Wow, interesting. So such an interesting perspective when you put it that way, just the whole process. So what foods and activities actually exacerbate the whole premenstrual tension aspect?
Yes, I think coming to the practical part of it, the theory can be really fascinating,
Yeah.
but practically speaking, most symptoms are related to Vata and Pitta. Vata creating variations in mind-related, emotions-related changes. There could be cramps and pains, etc. Uh, this Vata symptom is always aggravated by food which is too dry or too heavy to digest. It's a bit hard to understand, but I would say heavy to digest is not just rich food. It's also food which is uncooked and food which is actually like, for example, salads. Salads might be the most simplest and easy to digest food if you really think about it, but it's extremely vata aggravating. It can create bloatedness. It can create that heaviness because it's not fully cooked. Similarly, lentils and pulses can, especially brown, red lentils and yellow lentils are fine. Moong dal and split red lentils are fine. Most others usually create some form of bloatedness and heaviness, which is also primarily vata aggravating. So should be avoided if there is symptoms of vata at that time. And I think more than food, what also plays a very important role, which is very beautifully explained in an Ayurvedic textbook, is activities as well. Because it is said that when there is vata symptom, doing exercises excessively is compared to like a lion winning over an elephant, but then dying after that. So when the vata is too high, you may be able to do strenuous exercises because of the drive and energy that is felt from the movement, air, and space, but it is very easily depleted, and the whole process feels like fighting against a big elephant, and the energy and the whole ability of the body is fully depleted by the time. So before the cycles start, that period of time, if there are symptoms of vata, activity has to be kept to more gentle, calming, grounding exercises. Even though the mind is actually quite active, feels like doing many things, might crave for sweet things, try and understand that sweet is good for your body in this state, and it shouldn't be sugary, rich kind of food. It could be like naturally sweet ingredients like root vegetables, or it can be licorice. It can be things which are naturally sweet, fruits, dates, all of these, which are equally nourishing as well, and will prepare by preventing any depletion of your nutritional sources during the menstrual phase. So it's a mix of food, it's a mix of activity focused management.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Um, it is. Uh, I'm aware of this through the practice of yoga, that
Hmm.
they actually promote a more yoga nidra, a more restorative yoga during this time, rather than kind of um, high energy or lots of flow yoga. And I
Hmm.
guess that's the same with hitting the gym and all of that. So what you're saying is, during that time, take it easy on your body and relax, and also succumb to your craving for sweet things,
Hmm.
but have naturally sweet things such as root vegetables and fruit and
That's a very important part, because a lot of people I've seen, just giving an example, will have a craving for sweet and end up having dark chocolate,
right.
which is very common because dark chocolate will satisfy or feels like it satisfies that craving. And dark chocolate is extremely acidic, and it is so acidic that if you consume in larger quantities, it might actually make the flow heavy. It might make the cycles come a bit early. It's that much acidic and heaty. So you can't cheat the body by giving something bitter. If you are actually craving for sweet, it has to be really sweet. Now the
I think
choice is between like a fruit or something like, yeah.
yeah, like a
Nuts.
mango or a banana. I wish I had known this years ago, Dr. Mathew, while I was eating my big chunks of chocolate, dark chocolate. Yeah, that's really interesting information. So, we've talked about these like premenstrual tension symptoms, and the whole cycle. What kind of home remedies can be taken to reduce like excessively painful and heavy periods?
Right. So uh, the kind of effect on the cycles can be that there could be, like you mentioned, excessive pain or heavy menstruation. There could be also cramps and pains associated with lighter cycles as well, as an after effect of this a different kind of imbalance. So depending on what kind of nature is there. So pain and excessive pain usually indicates vata. So if it is cyclic, and we know that it is from the changes happening during the cycles, it is understood as vata. Obviously, any other causes has to be eliminated before attempting home remedies. But if it is understood as vata, if it is related to the cycles, and you know that sometimes you take antispasmodics and immediately gets better, then a better alternative will be to apply slightly warm castor oil on the lower abdominal area and lower back. And it might be also a good idea to sort of give a mild support with a nice cotton or muslin cloth, to just not too tightly but gently sort of support that area. And also it'll do the also benefit, as the oil will not mess up everything else you are touching. So it'll cover it up and it'll act as a nice pack which will keep it warm and help the absorption of the oil. And oils are usually the best friend of vata, vata being dry. Another important remedy which is possible, if somebody has similar sort of pain and cramps, but not too heavy bleeding. If it is heavy bleeding, it will be different, but not too heavy bleeding. Then a traditional remedy, which is very commonly used in South India, not just an Ayurvedic remedy, is black sesame. Black sesame seeds. Black sesame seeds are prepared into like an energy ball, almost into a sweet dish, with a little bit of jaggery. If everybody's familiar, it's a preparation which comes along with molasses and everything when sugar is made out of sugar cane. It's a natural form. So jaggery, or brown sugar if that's not available, and dates, or instead of sugar it can be just dates with some almond flour or coconut flour, something to hold it together. A little bit of dry ginger powder, a little bit of cardamom will make its absorption and digestion easy, and make it into an energy ball and have it for like 5 to 7 days prior to the cycle. Will make sure that the pain is much less. The body is actually now storing enough of iron, storing enough of nutrient and resources to comfortably go through the cycles without feeling depleted or tired. So that is quite a very common remedy used if there is pain and cramps with not too excess flow. Like cocoa or chocolate, black sesame also can increase the flow. That's why I am recommending not to do it if the flow is heavy. If the flow is heavy and there is pain, you can do the same thing with just white sesame. It's like uh, brothers and sister, but they are both having slightly different nature in terms of its heating tendency. They're both nourishing, but black sesame is slightly more acidic and warming, whereas white sesame is a bit more gentle. And you can make it even more easy to digest by toasting it and then using it in this recipe to make it into an energy ball. And that usually helps with the cramp and the pains, and also make sure that the cycles are healthy and regular. Taking it too long, more than 5 to 7 days, it doesn't create any trouble. It might make the cycles come a bit early. So it's not recommended to keep taking it every day. It can be quite acidic and heating.
So intermittently, and presumably the black sesame energy balls. I
Hmm.
mean, even if you stopped having your periods, you can have that if you're feeling tired or low, if it has
Definitely,
high
definitely. Vata symptoms, if you
yeah,
can identify Vata symptoms,
yeah.
uh, any Vata symptoms, it's the best sort of remedy and it's nice and sweet. There are not many Ayurvedic medicines that are nice to taste.
That's true. Yeah. Um, so before we move on to kind of perimenopause, I just
Mm,
want to get the Ayurvedic perspective on the use of contraceptive pill, please.
right. It's one thing which is did not exist when the traditional
Sure.
textbooks were written. So this is not, I think, fully Ayurvedic perspective. This is my Ayurvedic perspective, and the understanding is that our hormonal system is almost like a domino thingy. So if one thing changes, it has an effect on another one, and it keeps creating a cycle of events, and it comes back to the first initial event, almost like a domino effect, and it's very um, gently balanced system. We know that even exposing ourselves to plastic and things which are mildly interacting with our hormones is creating major issues later in life. So I'm pretty sure, unfortunately, hormonal contraceptives will also have some form of impact. Now, the another aspect of viewpoint of this is in a younger age, when the person is actually going through hormonal changes cyclically quite efficiently. At that time, body also has the ability to deal with these changes. We are not sort of mindfully taking it for as long necessary, then it should be fine. If there is no attention given to how your body is responding to this, and maybe also observing that there are symptoms created because of hormonal intake, and then ignoring that or trying to heal it through other medicines, is a recipe for not so good situation. So my opinion is that it can be taken if you are responsible enough to have conversations with your body on a regular basis and take feedback and take steps to do it. It doesn't put you in any disadvantage that you might have taken contraceptive pill at some point in life, as long as you are maintaining this conversation with your body. Your body tells you everything. There's no secrets there.
Yeah. So really listen to what your body is telling you,
Exactly.
and absolutely, and don't ignore those little signs. I can again speak from experience on that, and I wish I had listened much earlier on. But yeah, so I think I think there's a lot of interest here, and in with the group around perimenopause, menopause.
Mm.
Hot flashes. Lisa's asked a question about hot flashes, but Lisa, just bear with us a little bit because we'll move on to that soon. I want to talk a little bit about perimenopause because people suffer perimenopause as early as their 30s into their 40s, certainly in their 40s, and they're not even aware that they are suffering perimenopause. They're going through certain symptoms, things are changing, and they think they're not aware that this is all because of perimenopause and hormones. Can you just touch on that a little bit, please, and talk about, what is perimenopause, again from an Ayurvedic perspective, and then the symptoms that you've seen around that.
Mhm. Right. So for an Ayurvedic doctor, looking at any stage in life, any sort of symptoms always brings the dosha lens into perspective. So we look it through the dosha lens. And before talking about perimenopause, not just in women, in men and in any human being, there are certain cycles happening according to an Ayurvedic point of view in your beginning stage of life where you are growing, nourishing, strengthening yourself. You will have a kapha tilt that is irrespective of your body constitution or any symptoms or illness. That's the nourishing required for body to develop. And middle age, say for a female, from menarche to menopause, starting of menstrual cycles to menopause, is the pitta phase naturally. And that's not just starting in the perimenopausal time. It's more sort of like visible from the beginning of the cycles, but it tends to go higher and higher and reach sort of a peak situation before the menopause. Menopause is usually not that eventful. It's before the menopause that it becomes much more difficult with the pitta symptoms, because naturally even man, women, all of us are going through the same phase, but because of the underlying hormonal variations happening, the changes in the reset the body is going through, there will be much more visible symptoms. So, it is quite common to see some of the symptoms from say 45 um, or 3 or 4 years before the menopause actually happen. Uh, but it's not again uncommon to see it much more sooner as well, especially if your body constitution is tilting towards pitta. Now, it doesn't put you in any disadvantage. It's just that you have to be very careful and visible. Pay attention to this visible signs that most of the symptoms that happens during the perimenopausal phase will be pitta origin, will be more heat imbalance. And some may actually, when I consult anybody, it usually comes up as a question that I actually put on a lot of weight at that time, and isn't that more kapha? It's not pitta. I'm sort of seeing kapha symptoms. But what I usually say is the root cause is still pitta, because imagine our body or the system as a, there is always homeostasis or balance, and imagine that our body has a thermostat, a switch to control how much is our body temperature. And what the thermostat does is, if it's set at say 36 degrees, when the temperature in the room goes above that, the thermostat tells the heating system to stop. And that means that there is no more use of energy, there is no more enough transactions happening there to use up all the energy that is consumed, and its energy is usually stored. And if the heat goes down, then we feel hungry, then we feel that the metabolism goes up. And in similar ways, when the pitta goes high, the body itself gives the feedback that there is no need to burn more and utilize more, and all the energy that we are consuming will have a primary tendency to get stored. It will have a primary tendency to be not utilized, stored in the body. And along with that, there are some effects on the water balance of the body, creating water retention as well. So the root cause is still concerned with the pitta imbalance, leading to some kapha symptoms. Pitta has to be treated, and almost all symptoms which are uh, sort of noticeable during this phase is pitta origin. There will be more sort of tendency towards heat. There will be other signs of inflammation also, wherever there is weak points, whether there is joints or aches and pains can also go higher. It acts as a trigger for any form of systemic inflammation to manifest, or immunity related symptoms to manifest. But the trigger is always heat and pitta.
Okay, and when you say immunity issues to manifesting, could it result in things like autoimmune issues at that point, or and you said aches and pains, weight gain? I'm just summarizing for my own benefit, really, around what these symptoms that happen in their 40s. And a lot of people don't really understand why that's happening. They just think
I think pitta is easily, if you translate, it looks like inflammation.
inflammation.
And that's a common theme going behind all of these. There is mild systemic inflammation tendency, which just manifests wherever there is a weak point. In Sanskrit, there is a term called sthana samsraya, which means that doshas might be out of balance, but until it finds a weak point to manifest, you wouldn't notice it as a symptom, or your blood test will come as completely normal. You go to the GP, they will say that there is nothing wrong. We can actually just consider it as related to the menopausal changes, etc., because it has not yet found a seat. And that's very important, because once it finds a seat, Ayurvedic treatments will involve deeper cleansing and panchakarma, which will be necessary to dislodge it, move it, and there will be more deeper and complex methods to remove the excess dosha. But if it is more systemic, then this can be easily controlled through, say, single plans, diet, lifestyle changes. That is sufficient
Yeah,
to
that's what I
prevent
was
it from going any further.
sorry, that's what I was going to ask you next. How can you control control that? Because also a subject to touch on there, the inflammation can also result in things like fibroids and cysts and stuff like that as well. Right? But what can you do in terms of general lifestyle changes to help remove that or balance more?
Right. So anyone actually approaching me with similar sort of issues will have to focus on a diet. There should be also practices related to activity, and there can be simple herbs and medications, Ayurvedic medications. Now, we won't talk much about medicines because those are very specific to the extent, depth, and need of that particular person. But diet-wise, uh, things that we understand as pitta aggravating or will increase the pitta imbalance are to be very strictly avoided, and most of them are nice and tasty ones which we normally have every day. But I can give you a brief idea of what are pitta foods. Pitta foods are, or pitta aggravating food ingredients are those when we consume, if it makes us feel warm, those are pitta aggravating. For example, even if it is a, say, chilled beer, it is chilled and it's usually consumed in warm weather. I've seen that here, but it also increases heat because it's fermented and acidic. It'll improve your circulation, and if you're outside in the cold, you might feel actually warm. Same is in much more intensity will happen with wine or spirits. So, excuse me. So, I think those kinds of food. So, majorly, it will include heavily fermented or distilled products like alcohol, vinegar, any hard varieties of cheese, certain food items which are known to be warming, mostly uh, not summery dishes, mostly used as wintry things like red meat, too much of chocolate or cacao. Coffee is quite acidic and stimulant. Um, Things like that has to be kept to minimum. If you consume them, then you have to notice whether it has an impact because every person responds to these food differently. An easy way which I feel that you will be able to know this, whether your body will respond, is to avoid all the acidic food for a week's time or 10 days time. Consider it as a detox. And at the end of it, try and bring back one by one what are you missing. If you're missing, say, coffee, if you're missing a glass of wine occasionally. And when you do that, pay attention to how that impacts the sleep, whether you're having more number of hot flushes. You'll be surprised to see sometimes this symptoms altogether vanish. And having one or two ingredients out of these occasionally and being mindful about it, there'll be very less symptoms. You'll be very easily able to manage something which would have needed, say, HRT or something more serious. You could easily manage through some food journaling and controlling. Now, pitta related food also include the nightshades like tomato, and it also includes wheat. It includes corn. uh, these are all in a different scale, slightly more acidic or less acidic. So the best way to do it is to do a blanket ban on these for like 7 days and then bring back each one of them and see how your body feels. It usually works out really well. And that's one of the major thing that happens when somebody is going through menopause and approaching me for a personalized sort of treatment plan or diet plan. This happens first anyway. uh, you will have to go through this if you want to go further in this. The second portion of the process, like activities, we usually say that some amount of activities are to be maintained, but too much heat generating, like for example doing high intensity workouts or doing going for a run, even though it's healthy, try and avoid it towards the later part of the day where we are approaching towards, say, between 10 p.m. and 2 p.m. is the, sorry, 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. is the pitta phase of the night. Like we all have cyclic changes. day and night also has it. So in that phase, there will be lots of hot flushes if we are actually um, stimulating our body, doing a lot of exercise in the evening time. So try and bring all your activities and exercises to the morning time and keep the evening really calm, and even try and get sort of a quick shower or a lightly not so hot bath or something in the evening. Try and do more sort of cooling ritual. Cooling ritual in Ayurveda can include, say, applying essential oils like sandalwood or vetiver and things like that on your body. Um, Having instead of tea and coffee, having coconut water and things which are cooling in nature. One of the best friend uh, for women in that phase is a plant called Kumari in Ayurveda. Kumari in Sanskrit means a young woman, and the plant is actually aloe vera. Aloe vera is cooling and it has an ability to balance our hormones to some extent. So try and include aloe vera in different form. You can actually apply it. You can actually use it as aloe vera juice. Um, if you have a plant, you can take out the pulp from inside, chop it into small pieces, and keep it in the freezer or fridge, and then use it up in every day a small quantity with a little bit of water. So there are different ways of taking it. You also get dehydrated aloe vera powder also, which you can hydrate up, mix it with juices or fruit preparations, and then have it with food or smoothies, etc. So try and follow as much as possible a cooling ritual, include coconut water, include aloe vera, things which you know are strongly cooling in effect, and try and keep your evenings as light and easy as possible to see hot flushes and most of the pitta symptoms. If it's not creating any inflammation related issues, they're unpleasant, and it's only bad if it's disturbing your routine, which includes your sleep or your day-to-day activities, your focus, etc. Otherwise, that itself is not the problem. The problem is the underlying imbalance, which is pitta, and that can manifest anywhere. This is one of the very visible symptom, but it can manifest anywhere.
Gosh. So if you have a high pitta concentration,
Hmm.
you're more likely to have these hot flushes. And so the idea is go into this cooling phase. And just to summarize again, do a 7-day almost detox where you're almost moving completely plant-based. So you're cutting out wheat, maybe a little bit of light dairy,
Yeah.
but meat, alcohol, sugar, processed sugar. Fruits are okay, right? Just to see how you react, and then slowly bring them one in at a time. Um, and so be really intentional about what you're eating, and think about that. And the food diary, I think, is a great idea. I've done that myself, and yeah, fascinating results from that. So okay, there's a question here from Odile, which is a good one, about brain fog during
Hmm.
perimenopause or menopause. That's I've I've met lots of women who are going through menopause or still in perimenopause phase, who are incredibly strong, successful, incredibly intelligent women who are just forgetting things.
Hmm.
And almost like when they're talking, their like words get muddled up, or they're forgetting where they're going, and it's a complete change in character, and it's very common. So tell us what we can do, please.
Right. I think the
Help
question
that.
actually is asking also the cause behind it. So
Yeah.
I would say that the ability to focus and sort of problem solve, the ability to think in a certain focused direction, all of these are pitta functions which will get muddled up, and the higher pitta tendency will only create reactions. It will just create frustration or anger or certain reactions instead of be able to sort of immediately process it properly. And I'm sort of making a hypothesis there. It's not well established, but that could be the cause behind most of the focus, memory, and symptoms related to concentration, which collectively uh, we consider it as a foggy sort of a feeling. uh, I think the treatment is still similar to the to the one I have explained because of the cost involved. And I also feel that it is something that would also say we shouldn't too much push the sort of system to sort of worry about it or to be anxious about it, rather understand it as a very short-term phase if we pay attention to our diet and routine, and it can come back to normal where it was quite easily. It's a phase where the body is resetting. So physically, if there's a reset happening, one thing that should be paid attention, that life also needs to change a little bit. It needs to reset in some form, and it should be mostly for good. It should be for the better benefit. The process of preparing the body for a procreative function every month is very, very effortful and very high energy consuming. So the body doesn't want to do that. It's not sustainable. If it's done for a longer term, it can create, like you were mentioning earlier, fibroids and things like that, which are anomalies. To prevent that, the body is stopping it. And our activity pattern was based on what was there before. It actually releases much more energy and ability after this process finishes. But during this process, identify the nature of it, take things easy and light. Other than the ones which I've already mentioned, the only other things which we might use will be certain particular herbs, but that will be also based on person to person. There is no, I don't want to make a single recommendation of, say, ashwagandha or anything for everybody, but it will be based on person to person. There could be herbs that can relieve some of the symptoms. And then once the perimenopausal phase is passed through, it'll be actually much more focused, much more concentration. All of that actually improves. The body focuses on rest of the function now properly.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we're going through perimenopause, there's a feeling of frustration, especially if we have that high pitta element, and pitta for me is synonymous with like Western lifestyle, which is moving forward, action, getting things done, all those things we've been kind of taught to do. And there is, when your body's kind of resisting that and wanting you to stop doing that, there are elements of feeling frustrated, irritated or angry, or all of those emotions, and which then exacerbates the pitta, and then you go around in the circle, right? But I think the big message I'm feeling getting from you here is be gentle on yourself through this period. Yeah,
Yes.
because
And
when you
and
come out
also,
at the other end, it's going to
yeah,
be worth it, because then all the energy your body was using to go through that, menstruation cycle, you're conserving that energy, and you'll, once you get through the symptoms, you're actually going to be in
true.
a nice place.
Yeah, and also I was going to also say that it's worse if your symptoms or constitution or imbalance prior to that event is related to pitta. If somebody has a, say, a vata or a kapha related tendency, just to sort of address that aspect as well. It's very common if somebody has a naturally vata tendency, might actually go through this phase like a breeze. Most people describe it like a breeze, with no hot flushes, no other symptoms, uh, managed it quite well. In fact, felt really well, and post that also. So that's mostly vata nature, constitution, symptoms, personality type. Post menopause, they'll have to focus a little bit more on bone health, etc. If somebody is kapha natured and is going through the menopausal phase, there will be mild sort of hot flushes and pitta symptoms, but kapha symptoms can also be aggravated, like I said, due to this thermostat effect. There will be water retention, bloatedness, heaviness, all of that. Um, there, the focus has to be again on pitta, because the cause is still pitta. Kapha is also an associated factor, so might not be wise to take too much of milk products or anything too heavy, but still the focus has to be on reducing acidic or things that promote increasing body heat, and focus on pitta itself.
Yeah, and that's interesting because there is this um, there is I don't know if it's a misconception, but there is an idea that women in Asia
Mhm.
suffer far less at this time during menopause and perimenopause. I'm not sure if that's actually true, but again, does that fit in with our lifestyles and that whole kind of Western approach of
I think there
that
is
Pitta element
nothing
in
to
our
actually, yeah, I don't think it's a true fact or anything. It's just maybe that, like you said, the lifestyle in West is very Pitta promoting. It might not be that high Pitta promoting in East. Like I have never seen my mom having chocolate. She has other sweet things, obviously, which is naturally sort of prepared in the routine there. But chocolates are quite acidic. There is not that much consumption of alcohol. This might have some effect, but I think it's lifestyle. I don't think, yeah, there is any disadvantage other than that.
yeah. The other, we've touched on it and you've mentioned it, but of course there is this weight gain issue
Hmm.
coming into menopause and perimenopause. Maybe if we can just touch on that one more time, expand on it a little, because a lot of people suffer from that.
Yes, so once we understand the cause factor behind, it's very important to know that it's not related to diet. So a lot of time, uh, people can do the mistake of before coming to me, they might have gone through like 3 or 4 waves of diets, where doing a diet helped them lose weight, then gained it, then lost again, then gained it, and that usually easily sort of tells you with proof that it's not your diet which is causing that. It is mostly related to this tendency. So the diet has to be focused not on the basis of calories, it has to be focused based on these qualities. So even if it is rich in carbohydrates, rice will be actually good in this place. It'll be good to include oats, it'll be good to include fruits and smoothies and things like that, which are cooling in effect and may still have calories, may still be actually rich in nutrients, which is necessary for the system to deal with this situation. It'll be actually better not to do any kind of strict diets which prevents calorie intake, which will only contribute to increasing, in fact, the frustration and the lack of belief on that food can be used as a method of healing, because we are looking at food in a wrong way. Apart from that, when it comes to activity, it'll be really good to focus on regularity rather than intensity or like length of doing some activity. It's good to do water-based activity if you like it, like swimming in the sea, swimming in, I don't know if how safe it's to do pools nowadays, but if you have the facility, uh, pool or water-based activities are quite, we understand in Ayurvedic point of view, it's all simple common sense that it's cooling, it's not very heaty in effect. Gentle walk and jog will be all right, not too intense running, even though it might actually increase the immediate utilization of calories or stored nutrients, but it'll actually suppress the metabolic rate, make you feel a bit more tired. So it's best to do regularly some form of activity, because we are going through a cyclic change. So we want to support the body by creating good routine. We want to create an activity routine that's more in the morning. We want to create more sort of winding down, calming, grounding, slowing down activities in the evening to promote better quality of sleep. Sleep will be really essential and important in going through this phase properly. And also sleep is very much um, sleep would have a strong effect on metabolism and weight as well. So it's important to make sure that you have enough quantity and good quality sleep. It's important to include, say, mind activities like meditation or breathing exercises, if that can actually help you with getting into sleep. Once you get into sleep, the depth will be actually good. And if the sleep is not sufficient, it's perfectly fine to take a nap during the middle of the day in a reclining position, not sort of lying down completely, because that'll also lower the metabolism. If your head is kept slightly up, your body sort of realizes that you're not fully sort of winding down and sleeping, you're just catching on some rest that is required, and that usually makes sure that your metabolic rate stays in its normal rate. It doesn't go down even if you take a quick nap during the day if the night sleep was not sufficient. So again, the focus is still on Pitta. So one very important focus is that we don't want to restrict calories. That's not the way how this would work in terms of weight loss. Everything else will be same, but the calorie intake has to be similar and sufficient for your level of activity.
Great, thank you, Dr. Mathew. Um, what happens around bone health and
Hmm,
maintaining that after menopause? Because obviously that becomes the issue of osteoporosis
hmm.
becomes more heightened and yeah.
Yeah, so like I was mentioning about the perimenopausal phase, both men and women go through Pitta phase in the second stage of life. The third stage of life, everybody goes through a Vata stage. Uh, that usually is visible if we notice that most age-related issues are concerned with movement, which is movement is air and space and Vata-related function. It can be because of effect on bones and joints. It can be because of Vata's effect on nervous system. Either of these. So this is there is a trend of slight degeneration also happening because of the excess of Vata happening in this stage of life, which happens in everybody. Like a Pitta constitution person might find the menopausal, perimenopausal phase difficult and symptoms more aggravated. Vata tendency person will see most of the symptoms increased during this phase, post-menopause. Post-menopausal phase is characterized by the main nature of Vata, which is dryness and coldness. Dryness might manifest particularly not just external skin dryness, it can manifest as dryness in the cartilages between the joint, creating degenerative changes there. It can make bones brittle. It can also make dryness in the vagina, dryness in eyes, dryness anywhere in the body. Any mucous membrane can actually show up the signs of Vata. There are hormonal factors involved, and that is the reason why sometimes hormonal medications are prescribed. But we understand these changes happen both in men and women. After a certain age, it's not just hormones. Hormones are also part of this whole process, but dryness will develop. It cannot be prevented completely. Being aware of it makes you more able to take some steps to prevent that dryness. So, for example, if you've been mostly staying away from oils because oils are fattening or unhealthy, this is sort of the time you can mindfully include healthy oils, whether it is olive oil or coconut oil or ghee or any good natural oils in your regular routine. External oil applications are also very important, especially for bone health and joint health. I think Ayurveda initially when it became popular outside Kerala and outside India, it was because of treatment of arthritis and back pain and all joint issues, because there is definitely lots of oil involved. Everybody gets sort of marinated and cooked. When you go for an Ayurvedic treatment, you are applied loads of herbal oils, you are put into steam. So that's basically what the treatment of Vata looks like. It's opposite to dry and cold. So it has to be oleation, application of oil, and consumption of good quality oils, and also oil-rich seeds or oil-rich fish. They're all equally supportive. And if you can have small fish which has got whole bones and cartilages in it together, if you consume, you understand that like increases like in Ayurveda, and that can actually also nourish your bones and joints. Warmth is also good. So if you can't do a steam bath or things like that at home, you can take a regular hot bath, apply oil and take hot bath regularly. That's also really good for the joints nourishment. Like I mentioned initially for the PMS uh, symptoms, which are also slightly Vata related, taking black sesame or white sesame is also good. Sesame oil is good externally. Internally, you could use toasted white sesame on your morning porridge or muesli, and doing that regularly. Nowadays, we know that sesame seeds has got good amount of calcium. It has got good amount of oils which we take out as sesame oil. So you'll get that as well to nourish your bones, joints, firstly, and also it'll have a nourishing effect on your nervous system in general to keep memory, focus, all of that intact for a very long time, naturally.
Great. And so that's an Ayurvedic practice, isn't it?
Hmm.
Having like giving yourself a sesame oil massage after your shower or before your shower.
Before is better, yes.
Before, yeah, before. And then so you would recommend that definitely for this phase in life.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I think post the menopausal phase,
Yeah.
whenever I recommend anybody oil application, um, I have seen in my last 4 years, maybe I've recommended it to like 1,000 people. I think 800 will have continued it even after 4 years. Will never stop it because once you see the benefit of it in that phase, it is very. It's not very common to stop because it's doing it once a week during this kind of weather, or if it gets colder and drier, the nature becomes cold and dry in winter time, or that sort of time, you can apply it more often. You will feel the difference quite quickly.
So just getting organic sesame oil and giving yourself, and in a way,
Yes,
it's that nurturing of yourself as well. That whole process of self nurturing, and
definitely. And it should be
time,
like, yeah, like you mentioned, it should not be toasted sesame oil. That's what we get in
not toasted
supermarket.
sesame oil,
No,
not the
you'll
one we buy in Waitrose.
no, it'll be literally be marinating yourself. That's not
Yeah,
ideal.
you put yourself in the grill. Yeah, after that. Um, the um, the last question, and I guess it's
Hmm.
going to be the same answer as the contraceptive pill, is
Hmm.
HRT is a big thing, and there's lots of we will in the future actually have a session with a doctor who talks about HRT,
Hmm.
but it's such a contentious issue, and there are so many different views on it. Can you, I know again, traditionally you can't give us your Ayurvedic view because it wasn't around when the Ayurvedic scripts were written, but give us your personal view, please, Dr. Mathew, on HRT.
Right. So, right, it's also external hormones. Now, I think two, three things need to be clarified. One thing is HRT is not just prescribed for menopausal or postmenopausal symptoms. It can be because of like ovarian failure, or it can be because of post-surgery, post-radiation therapy, etc., etc. And in those cases, if a consultant thinks that the benefit is better than some of the side effects which are known, I think I don't say that it's part of the modern medical system. That's how it treats health issues, and in certain cases, it is actually supporting life in a proper quality. So I would not say it's a bad idea. HRT, in my viewpoint, becomes a slightly bad idea if it is purely to deal with some of the symptoms of perimenopausal phase, like for example hot flushes or some of the symptoms related to weight gain, because it becomes completely wrong. I think HRT actually does have no impact on weight. It might actually increase weight rather than reduce it. There are a lot of studies done on this aspect. It doesn't reduce weight. So because estrogen is a nourishing hormone, it's very kapha like hormone, so it reduces pitta symptoms, but it does not reduce weight. So if the reasons for taking it is related to anything medically related, it should be prescribed based on the doctor's suggestion. If it is menopausal symptoms really aggressively affecting life pattern, then it can be taken, but there should be always an exit plan. Medicines with no exit plan is like as bad as a disease. It's like I said, it's a kapha type hormone, usually prescribed, or if it's a combination pill also, it's usually kapha type, reducing pitta symptoms. And it tends to have, there are studies which show there could be tendencies towards more tumor developments, or stroke and other blockages, etc., etc., which are all kapha origin disorders, which we are sort of getting because of something we do. So if that can be prevented, if it's not taken for long term, if we take our own steps, which we need to take with respect to lifestyle and diet, and then use it as an extra support for a very short period of time, then definitely why not? Should be, if we have studied it so well and if it's useful, it should be taken, but not forever. And whenever HRT is stopped, there will be another menopause. There will be another set of days. It depends on person to person that there will be all those symptoms again, because the body will show some sort of changes when you stop it.
Interesting. Very interesting. Gosh, we could carry on with this. I have several comments and questions after that, but HRTs are a big subject. So I do have one final question. It says, what if you show signs of both Pitta and Vata?
Pitta and Vata is very, very common to have signs of Pitta and Vata together. You have to treat, if it is so in this context, if it is related to hormonal changes in different stages of cycles, like I mentioned earlier, the cause factor is still Pitta. Vata is there. We won't ignore it. We shouldn't ignore it. But at the same time, the cause factor has to be treated. Otherwise, you can only manage the symptoms. You can't manage the actual issue. And the cycle of events keep on happening until we address the real cause. So both of Pitta and Kapha or Pitta and Vata do coexist almost so commonly that if the causative factor is related to hormonal change and phase of hormonal change, that should be addressed first.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Mathew.
Sure.
I omitted to say earlier that if you want to see Dr. Mathew's first talk with us, it's actually on our YouTube channel, where he talks more in detail about the different constitutions, the different types. So I would recommend you do that short quiz on the link we sent you, and then watch that video. We'll put it again in the link when we send out this recording. Dr. Mathew, thank you so much for your expertise and your wisdom. And as you know, I'm a very big fan of Ayurveda, and I think it can solve so many issues.
I hope that people who listened got it's a vast sort of a subject. It's a vast kind of a science with very unique viewpoints. But if you picked up one or two things which might have ringed a bell and, oh, maybe I could try this, that's where you start. That's how everybody starts. You're not supposed to remember everything, but if you listen to me every day, you'll become Dr. Mathew, which is not ideal. I can't practice after that. So remember a few things and apply a few things, try and see how you feel, then continue that conversation with your own body. It tells you exactly what to do.
Wonderful. I'm off to make the sesame balls. I'm a convert already. It sounds amazing.
It's in Malayalam. In Malayalam, in South India, it's called Ellunda. Ellunda. Ellunda.
Okay.
If you search online, you might find one or two recipes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you again. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.